This video is for students of IAS 566. This will show you how to configure and connect to your System on Grid server that we'll need for working through the class. So I'll start by logging in at systemongrid.com. And since I haven't configured any servers yet, things do in fact look a little empty here. So I'll click on the button here to create orbit. That's what System on Grid calls their virtual servers, orbits. So we'll create an orbit. And we've got several different distributions to choose from. I'm going to choose Ubuntu. That's the one we'll use in this course. And we'll use 18.04, which is the long-term stable release. Okay, now we're going to specify how much CPU and RAM to use. So even though we can get by with just one CPU and 1 GB at the beginning of class, as we move into some of the more advanced topics, we'll need to have at least 2 GB of RAM. So I'm going to select the 2 gigs. We should have enough credits to be able to turn this server on today and run it for the rest of the term with the credits that System on Grid has given us. And again, here as well, we could probably get by with 10 GB, but I'm going to go ahead and choose 20 GB of storage. Now, here's an important option. Are we going to use Authenticate by password or by SSH key? I'm going to take you through how to authenticate with SSH key, because the truth is these machines will probably get hit pretty hard by folks trying to who've just kind of stumbled across the IP address and are trying to gain access to them. So the last thing we want to do is make it easier for them by having an open password out there. So we'll choose SSH key. And now it's going to ask us to upload a public key for them to be able to use for this. So we'll need to go ahead and create those keys, and I'll show you how to do that. All right, so I'm going to need to create a new private key, public key pair. And to do that, I've opened up PowerShell. Now, if you're doing this on Mac, you should just be able to open up a terminal, and this should work just exactly the same way. So by default here, I'm in the home directory for my user. So I'm just going to type in ssh-keygen and hit enter. Say, listen, we're going to make a new public key, private key pair. Where do you want to put it? The default location will be fine here. It will create this folder .ssh. The dot's going to signify that it's going to be a hidden folder, and it'll make the private key here in this ID RSA file. Now it's asking for a passphrase for security. You probably should type a passphrase in. You'll have to enter that passphrase anytime you want to connect using this method. But that passphrase is processed locally. It's not sent across the internet, and so that's going to be quite a bit safer. For convenience sake, I'm just going to leave it blank for me. And so now I've generated that file. In fact, we can take a look at that private key just by saying cat and then /.ssh /id_rsa.pub. And that will show that file. And so that's the public key. It's the key that I can share with anyone that wants to give me access, password-free access to a site, and so you'll be sharing that with yourself. It turns out the System on Grid account is going to ask me to paste this key in, so I'm just going to go ahead and copy it. Press Control-C. Presumably that's Command-C on the Mac, and then come back to my System on Grid setup page. So here I'm going to say add a new SSH key, type the name of my key. I'll just call it Professor Allen. And I'll paste that key right in here. We'll create that key. That should add it to the list of SSH keys. And so now I'll select that Professor Allen. Oh, misspelled, but that'll be okay. Use that key right here. Okay, so now it's asking for the host name. So for the host name, I'm going to set this up as just IS 566. Number of orbits we'll create is 1, and for the description, for use in IS 566 at UIU. And we're ready to create that orbit. Free credits can only be applied to the month-to-month section, so we'll have to choose the month-to-month pricing. That's fine, and continue. Now it's creating that in the background here, but it's giving us some information along the way. So it's going to create an initial connection through root. That's the main reason we didn't want to use the password. Having a password available out there en route for folks to be able to guess is a pretty insecure thing. So you'll see SSH username at the IP address, which they're going to show us here shortly. So I've got that, and here now they've given me my IP address to use here. So let's go ahead and see what we can do to connect onto that account. So again, I should be able to do this right from PowerShell, or if I'm on the Mac, the terminal will do the trick here. So back to PowerShell, and I'm going to SSH root at, got the IP address, 3876.11.222. 3876.11.222. And if everything's gone right, it should just connect straight on. Oh, are you sure you want to be able to connect on to this? We can't really identify that there's not a man in the middle happening here, but we're just going to go ahead and say yes here. You have to type out yes, Y-E-S. Added that machine to our known hosts, and now here we are logged on to that server. Here I can do some normal things here. See what my present working directory is. List my files. There shouldn't be anything here yet. And so, however, if I do an ls-al, I should be able to see hidden folders. And the important one here is that I've got this .ssh folder here on this machine as well. So I'm going to go ahead and change directories there. Just take a peek. Change directories to .ssh. I'll list the files here again. And now here is the file that when they set up this server, they placed it here called authorized keys. If I take a look at that with cat, it should be exactly the same file that we had there before. So looks like we've got two here. And here's this last one. Here's one that gives me access of Alan. Okay, so the next step is we don't want to be logging in as the root user all the time. So let's go ahead and see what it takes to add a user that we can use to connect and just use for general everyday use. Okay, so let's create a user. I'm going to start off by clearing the screen. Okay, I'll create the user by calling the add user command. And we'll give it a name, student. Now you can create other users if you like, but I would like you to create a student account. And that's the one I want you to do most of your work with on this machine for this class. That way, if I need to connect onto your machine to take a look at things, I'll know which user you're using and be able to find the content I'm looking for. Okay, so it's asking for a password. I'll go ahead and enter a simple one. We'll remove the password later in this example. Full name. Go ahead and put your full name in here. And we're going to skip the rest of the things here. We don't need a phone number or other. Is the information correct? Yes. Okay, so we've created that user. Next, I'm going to want to make sure that user has permissions to do administrator level things, and so I'm going to add it to the list of sudoers. Oh, that's that might be a term you're not familiar with, but sudo just is a command you can put in front of other commands to elevate your permissions to have root level permissions. So let's see how to do that. So I'll use the user mod statement, modify the user, and I'll tell it to dash lowercase a and dash capital G to append the user to the group that I specify, and that will be the sudo group, S-U-D-O group. And then we will add the name of the user, which is student. And that gave us no error, so we've successfully added the student to the list of sudoers, the ability to switch user to the administrative user and then run a command. Okay, now I'd like to use the same public key that I uploaded for the root user and make that the public key that I'll use to authenticate with when I try to log in as the student. And so I'm still the root user right here, and oh, here I am still in the SSH folder. So what I would like to do is I would like to create, in fact, let me just go ahead and copy this whole SSH folder over to the student's user account. And so I'm going to come up one level, so change directory ... And now I should be able to do an ls-al to see that I've got that .ssh folder here. That .ssh folder just has that one file, authorized keys, in it. And I would like to put that over in the student's home directory. So here I'm going to just do that with the CP statement. So CP, and I'll say -r for recursive. I want to take the folder as well as the file contents that are in it. And I'll say ./.ssh, so current directory to the SSH. And then I'll put the new location for that, which will be /home/student. And that should move that, or should copy that file over there. So I'm going to go ahead and change directories to that location. So cd /home, so from the root to the student's home directory. Check my present working directory, pwd, and that's where I am, /home/student. Do an ls-al here, and we'll see that we have that SSH folder is right here, but there's a couple of problems. First one is that this is going to be owned by root, and for security reasons, when we're authenticating, the folder as well as its contents need to be owned by the user who's being authenticated. So our next step is going to be to change the ownership on this folder. Okay, so for this, it's going to be the change owner command. So chown and R for recursive on this command. And here we're going to put now the name of the user goes next. So I want the new user owner of this to be student. And then a space, and now I want the path, which is ./.ssh. And so now we should be able to do an ls-al, and we should see that the owner of the file, or the owner of that folder, is student. We still have a group as root, and so we're going to change that as well. So that command is just like change owner, but it's change group. So I'll just arrow up a couple of commands and change this line from chown to chgrp. And now if we do an ls-al, we should see that both the owner and the group is student. I'm just going to go ahead and change directories into the SSH folder and do an ls-al there. And we'll just make sure that we have things owned here. Yeah, so those did change the ownership of that file as well. Okay, so I think we should be in pretty good shape now to be able to connect as the student user. So let's go ahead and give that a shot. So I'm going to exit off of this connection to the server, and that's just the command exit. Now I'm back here at PowerShell, my PowerShell prompt. So I'm going to connect again, but this time instead of using root, I'm going to use student. And if everything went well, we'll connect right up. And it looks like we connected right up. Let's exit out again. And let's try to log in a different way. So here I'm going to say I want to open up the SSH client, but I'm going to pass an option here that says we don't want to use public key authentication. Without public key authentication, the client will fall back to password authentication. And so when I execute that command, it'll say, what's your password? I'll put the password in, and I can still authenticate using the password. And so this represents a little bit of a security hole that we'd like to plug on this server, just because we don't want anyone out there trying to guess passwords to access this box. And so we're going to change the way that our SSH daemon or SSH service allows connections to be made. And so to do that, we have to edit its configuration file. Well, this file requires elevated permissions to be able to edit, so sudo. And then I will use my preferred editor, which is called nano, and ANO, and then I will give it the path to the file we're trying to edit, which is in from the root directory /etc/ssh/ssh config. It'll prompt me for the password for my elevated permissions. This is your regular student user's password. And it looks like comments show in green in this editor, and my background is blue, so it makes them a little bit difficult to read. But the things we need to change are the ones that are not comments, and here's the main one. Password authentication, yes. We're just going to change that to no. So Control X will let me exit out. Do you want to save your changes? Yes. I'll type Y. Where do you want to save it? Enter will let me save over the top of the existing file. And now we've saved that file, but we've got to tell the service to relook at those or to reload those configuration options. And so again, elevated permissions. And now we're going to run, we're going to tell the service to reload. So etc init.d/ssh reload. We reloaded those configurations. So now if we exit out and then try to come back in with no public key authentication, that should get rejected by the server. So now we just get permission denied. But if we go ahead and connect without suppressing public key authentication, then we should connect on just fine. And we're back in. And so we're configured. That's the basic configuration for these machines. Now we still need to grant access to Professor Allen to be able to access this machine, but that will be the subject of another video. That's it for now.